Aries, pause for just a moment and breathe, because what I am about to share is not another piece of internet noise, not another horoscope designed to keep you scrolling at midnight. This is different. This is a call across the veil, one that feels almost inconvenient, like the universe barged into your living room, kicked off its shoes, and said, "Listen up." If you carry Aries in your sun, moon, or rising, this message has your name stitched into its fabric. It is not borrowed, not recycled, not a cliché fortune. It belongs to you. And at the center of it stands the presence of a father. Maybe he has already passed and remains now only in the grainy photos you forgot to frame, or in the jokes you accidentally repeat without realizing you sound just like him. Maybe you never got the words you needed, no "I'm proud of you," no final goodbye, and so the silence lingers like an unfinished sentence. Yet here is the truth: love, real love, does not evaporate with time. It hangs in the air like incense, invisible but undeniable. Aries, I know you prefer action over reflection, that you would rather run a marathon than sit still with grief. But sometimes the bravest move is not a conquest but a pause, admitting you still crave a father's validation. And here's the cosmic irony: your father's message is simple, even humorous in its timing: don't forget yourself while you're busy conquering the world. Because while the world sees you as unstoppable, he sees the child who still needs to hear, even now, that they are enough. In that recognition, Aries, lies the gift. Love remains, and so do you. Aries, when we speak about the father, we are not speaking only of a man who raised you or failed to, but of a profound archetype that has followed humanity since the first stories were told around firelight. The father represents structure, identity, the one who says this is who you are before you have the courage to declare it yourself. In astrology, Mars, your ruling planet, is often tied to this image of the father, because Mars rules action, drive, and the instinct to survive. Place Mars in the first house of identity, the fourth house of roots, or the 10th house of destiny, and the father figure becomes unavoidable, a thunderous presence whether through love or absence. For Aries, this bond is rarely casual. It is dramatic, contradictory, sometimes painful. The father may have been a towering hero, or he may have left a vacuum so large it defined you more than his presence ever could. Either way, his imprint lingers, shaping not just who you are but the very battles you choose to fight. And here is the question that echoes like a drumbeat for many Aries: would my father be proud of me? It does not matter if you are leading companies, raising children, climbing mountains, or reinventing yourself every 3 years. The question still lives inside you like a ghost you never fully exorcise. I remember speaking with an Aries man who appeared unshakable, polished suit, sharp reputation, admired by his peers. But when we spoke of his father, his armor crumbled. He whispered that every contract he signed, every achievement he stacked, was secretly aimed at chasing one simple phrase he never heard: "You did good, son." In that silence, he finally realized that the endless striving was not just ambition but grief disguised as success. Sometimes the wound itself becomes the compass, pointing us to what is most unfinished. Psychology would call this unresolved grief, the lingering ache of a conversation never completed. Buddhism would call it clinging, the refusal to release what has already dissolved. Aries tends to call it Tuesday and then keep moving at full speed, because pausing feels like defeat. Yet the truth is this: it is not weakness when a photograph, an old jacket, or a familiar phrase buckles your knees without warning. It is the soul demanding recognition. You can outrun deadlines, you can outrun rivals, but you cannot outrun the echo of a father's voice you long to hear. Across the thousands of charts I have studied, I notice a pattern. Aries rarely collapses under failure. You are resilient, scrappy, unwilling to stay down when life throws punches. What brings you to collapse is something quieter: forgetting why you started to run in the first place. That original flame, the one that burned simply because it was yours, dims when everything becomes about proving, achieving, conquering. And when that happens, the Father returns, not necessarily in body, but in memory, dream, or symbol. He returns to remind you of your source, to place his hand on your shoulder and say, "Don't lose yourself in the fight." Now, let me add a touch of humor, because Aries does not enjoy dwelling too long in melancholy. You would rather climb Everest barefoot than sit in a therapist's office dissecting childhood wounds. Aries likes to pretend nothing hurts while secretly Googling "why do I cry" at commercials about dogs. And yet, even in your stubbornness, you know there is truth here. The father figure, whether flawed or saintly, still casts a shadow you cannot ignore. The irony is that Aries, the sign that prides itself on independence, often spends a lifetime subconsciously seeking paternal validation. You tell the world, "I don't need anyone," but deep down you still want dad, or at least the idea of dad, to nod once and say, "I see you." This is where psychology, astrology, and even Buddhist wisdom converge. In psychology, we understand that longing for validation is not immaturity, it is human. In astrology, we see that Mars fire, if unchecked, can burn without direction until it remembers its roots. And in Buddhism, we learn that clinging to what was unsaid only multiplies suffering, while releasing it allows transformation. Aries, your sacred task is not to erase the wound but to integrate it, to let it be both the scar and the map. The father archetype is complicated because it reminds you of both power and fragility. He may have been a fortress or a fracture, but either way, he gave you a starting point. And perhaps the paradox is this: his absence can shape you as much as his presence. The silence itself becomes an instruction, forcing you to answer for yourself the question he never did: who am I, really? So the sacred bond between Aries and the father is not about perfection. It is about initiation. Every time you hear that unspoken question, "Would he be proud of me?" you are invited not to run faster but to pause, to examine whether your fire is still your own. And if it isn't, that is when the father, in memory or dream, returns. Not to scold, but to remind you, the flame you carry began long before achievements, before trophies, before the endless chase. It began simply because you were alive. Aries, your task is not to win every battle. Your task is to remember why you fight at all. Aries, the spirit does not always choose the clearest grammar or the most logical syntax to reach you. The language of spirit often bypasses the mind and moves straight into the marrow of your being. Not every message arrives in the form of words you can quote at the dinner table. Sometimes it's a dream that feels more vivid than daylight. Sometimes it's a sudden flash of white light at the edge of your vision. Sometimes it's nothing more than the sensation that you are not quite alone in the room, though the clock ticks the same and the house is quiet. For most people, these whispers are subtle, elusive, easy to brush aside. But you, Aries, are not most people. You were born under Mars, the planet of action and disruption. Subtlety is not your language. If the universe wants your attention, it won't send riddles written in smoke. It will jolt you awake at 3 in the morning with a voice, or place you in a dream where a door opens on its own, or lead you down a road that is both foreign and uncannily familiar. I once worked with a young Aries woman who carried the weight of unspoken words from her father, who had passed years earlier. For 3 nights in a row she dreamed of him standing on a white bridge. On the first night, he said nothing. On the second, silence again, just his steady gaze. But on the third night, he finally spoke, his words simple and disarming: "You don't have to be strong anymore." She woke in tears, but they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of release. In that moment she understood that she had spent years proving herself in every arena, collecting titles, chasing recognition, exhausting herself when what her father's spirit wanted most for her was to live authentically, not endlessly armored. That is how this soul speaks. Not through flattery or shallow promises. Through liberation. And Aries, if you have ever had a dream like that, or a fleeting sensation you can't quite explain, don't dismiss it. That is not imagination. That is spirit. That is love without a body, but still with a voice. So what, then, is the unfinished conversation your father's soul brings to you? At its essence, it is this: do not abandon yourself. Whether those words ever crossed his lips in life or not, the love behind them was real. When a father's spirit lingers near, it is not to burden you with guilt or to weigh down your shoulders with more expectation. It is to remind you of your center, to place a gentle hand on your back as if to whisper, remember who you are. For some Aries, that reminder means slowing down, breathing, not treating life as an endless sprint. For others, it means daring to pick up the dream your father set down, dreams of art, of travel, of teaching, of living fully that he sacrificed to duty or circumstance. When you feel the same urge stirring in your chest, do not dismiss it as coincidence. That is inheritance, not in the form of money or property, but as a flame that still wants to burn. Legacy is not the house left behind or the watch in a drawer. Legacy is the mission that was never completed, passed quietly like a torch to the next hand, which happens to be yours. Now, because this is Aries we are talking about, we need to cut through the heaviness with some humor. Aries does not thrive on sentimentality for long. You're already restless, probably muttering, okay, this is all meaningful, but what am I supposed to do about it? That impatience is your signature. You don't just want comfort, you want an action plan with bullet points, preferably something you can start before this video even ends. So let's put this into Mars-approved terms. First, write a letter to your father. No one else needs to see it. No ceremony required. Just write down what you never said, whether it's I miss you or you really drove me crazy or I hope you see me now. That act alone turns silence into movement. Second, do one act of kindness in his name. Buy someone coffee, volunteer your time, or simply call your mother even if you know she'll talk your ear off about her neighbor's dog. That's Mars redirected into service instead of endless battle. Third, begin the project you've been postponing. You know the one. The one you keep promising yourself you'll start once you're less busy, though you somehow always remain busy. Aries procrastination isn't laziness, it's fear dressed up as productivity. Starting it now is a way of telling both yourself and your father's spirit, I am not abandoning the flame. And here's the heart of the message again, stripped to its essence, your father's soul is not asking you to cry forever. He's not asking you to prove your worth through endless conquest. His message is, move forward, but move forward with soul. Don't become so busy winning the world that you lose yourself in the process. Remember, Aries, the universe rarely needs to shout at you. But when it does, it's usually because you've forgotten that life is not only about conquering. It's also about carrying the torch of love, authenticity, and unfinished dreams, and making them your own. And if that reminder sometimes comes in dreams, in sudden flashes of light, or in the invisible weight of a hand on your shoulder, don't question whether it's real. The language of spirit is not logical. It is experiential. You know it by the way it breaks you open and then sets you free. When we step back and read the heavens with the patience of an old scholar rather than the impatience of someone scrolling through late-night horoscopes, the current sky reveals a remarkable turning point for Aries. Saturn, the old taskmaster, is retrograding in your 10th house, the very domain of destiny, mission, and reputation. It tolls like a bell that refuses to be ignored, asking the kind of questions that pierce through pretense. What are you building? And for whom? At the same time, Jupiter, planet of growth, faith, and divine blessing, moves through your 4th house, the house of family, ancestors, and roots. In the simplest translation, the cosmos is staging an intervention. It is saying, reconcile the mission you are chasing with the lineage you carry. The work you do, the reputation you cultivate, cannot exist in isolation. It is tethered to the soil from which you came. And contrary to what many Aries secretly fear, this is not punishment for your relentless drive. It is preparation. Preparation for what I have long called the Year of Triumph 2025, a year that will ask Aries not to win for conquest's sake but to triumph in ways that honor both your soul and the countless souls who walked before you. You, Aries, are among the chosen ones, called to carry the torch forward not only for yourself but for your entire lineage. I am reminded of an Aries man I once counseled, a man who had everything most people are told to chase: money, family, reputation. But he confessed to me that joy had fled him. His life felt like a well-decorated cage. I asked him a deceptively simple question: do you remember what your father wished for you? He went silent, then broke down in tears, whispering, he only wanted me to be myself. That moment was not dramatic. He didn't abandon his business empire or book a ticket to Bali for spiritual awakening. Instead, he began living in alignment, choosing projects that mattered to his inner compass rather than ones that impressed his neighbors. And just like that, the air shifted. He was still successful, still admired, but now he was alive rather than merely surviving. That is the essence of your father's message, Aries. Return to yourself. This is not regression, not a retreat into childish comforts. This is return, a courageous act of circling back to the fire that was always yours before the noise of the world made you forget its source. And this is where healing enters. Healing, Aries, is not running faster, collecting more medals, or proving to the world that you can endure. Healing is choosing one small action that reclaims your soul. It is writing the letter to your father that no one else needs to see. It is visiting the sacred place where your heart feels safe, whether that's a church, a forest, or simply your kitchen at dawn when the world is still. It is speaking his name aloud when you take a brave step, letting his memory walk beside you. Every act of love you place into the world becomes an invisible bridge, a way for his presence to live on not as a wound but as a guide. And here's the mystical twist that psychology alone cannot explain but life repeatedly confirms: when you act in love, the universe responds. Call it karma, divine symmetry, or the law of resonance, it works. Doors swing open, support arrives, opportunities unfold. Not because you are lucky, but because you are aligned. The alignment itself is the magnet. Still, because I know Aries well, we cannot end without humor. Grief, for you, does not look like sobbing quietly in bed with tissues and sad music. No, grief for Aries usually involves starting 3 ambitious projects at once, reorganizing your entire apartment at midnight, or suddenly deciding it's time to run a marathon despite not having jogged since high school gym class. These are the classic distraction tactics of a warrior who would rather fight new battles than sit with old wounds. And yet, here's the father's quiet instruction: don't run away. Run toward. And maybe, just maybe, pause between marathons to let yourself feel. Vulnerability is not your defeat, Aries. It is your doorway. Behind that doorway is not weakness, but a deeper kind of strength, the kind that can carry both your own fire and the torch of those who came before you. And if you can learn to balance the two, then 2025 will not only be a year of triumph in name. It will be the year you finally discover that the true victory was never about conquest. It was about alignment, authenticity, and the courage to return to yourself while carrying forward the legacy of love that shaped you. Aries, when we speak of the sacred trust of lineage, we are not weaving a metaphor for poetic effect. It is a truth I have seen repeated across history, culture, and the very fabric of astrology. Behind you stand countless generations, your father, his father, and those whose names you may never know but whose choices echo in your blood. At the front of this great procession stands you, the Aries pioneer, the one who carries the first flame of the Zodiac. Some might see that as a burden, as though you must shoulder the weight of every unfinished story. But a wiser view is this: it is not a burden, it is a trust. What you carry is not their sorrow but their unrealized dreams, their silenced voices, their unspoken blessings. In the year of triumph 2025, the universe is not asking you to be flawless, but to be authentic, to honor both your fire and their legacy by living fully and unapologetically. It is not about saying, "I owe my father this," but rather, "I am my father" continued. You are not a copy of his life, but the living extension of the love and courage he left behind. And here is where the mystery deepens. Your father's soul does not return to chastise you for your mistakes or to hover like a cosmic accountant tallying up your flaws. He returns because love is too vast to vanish. He comes as a flame that leans close and asks a single question: are you still yourself? If you have ever doubted the answer, know that the response will not come as thunder or spectacle but as a quiet peace. A stillness in your chest reminding you that you are not alone. So take this message with seriousness, but do not let it grow heavy. Let it guide you without chaining you. Let it remind you that even when the chair at the family table is empty, the love that once filled it remains. If you feel the truth of this, write it down not as a hollow affirmation but as a vow: I am ready to live a life my father would be proud of. That sentence becomes a soul contract, a promise to both yourself and the lineage standing behind you. Now, Aries, I know your nature. You don't enjoy sitting too long in solemn reflection. You are impatient with melancholy. You would rather laugh, shake off the heaviness, and get back to life. And that, too, is part of the wisdom. Because this is not a call to dwell endlessly in grief. This is a call to live, to chase joy, to savor your freedom, to let yourself dance even if no one else joins in. If anything, your father's unspoken blessing might be this: don't just survive, enjoy. Aries grief often looks suspiciously like a burst of overambition. You start 3 side hustles, sign up for a marathon, or rearrange your living room furniture at 2 in the morning. That's your way of avoiding stillness. But perhaps the more radical act, the braver act, is to let yourself enjoy life without guilt. To drink your coffee slowly. To laugh at your own impulsiveness. To admit that happiness is not betrayal, it is fulfillment. So when this video ends and you are pulled back into the ordinary rhythm of errands, emails, and endless tasks, do not lose this moment. Carry it like a flame. Aries, you are not a break in the chain, you are the continuation. You are the light that remains. And when you honor that truth, you not only mend your own wound, you carry the torch for others who are still searching for theirs. That is why the universe chose you, the Aries trailblazer. Because you are strong enough to carry both your own fire and the unfinished sparks of those who came before you. You are one of the chosen ones, not born to hide from pain, but to transmute pain into light. If this message touched you, share it. Someone else may be silently waiting for the bridge that only you can provide. And if you feel ready to claim it, write, I am ready to step into my sacred destiny. Because this is your time, your turning point, your year of triumph 2025. Live it not as a soldier chained to duty, but as a soul finally free to burn brightly. Aries, enjoy your life, not tomorrow, not someday, but now. And if you want to continue walking this path with me, remember to like, share, and subscribe to my channel, Zodiac Talks Tarot, so we can keep exploring together the wisdom written in the stars.